You are about to lose everything you are working toward. Not because you are lazy, not because you lack talent, but because of one habit so deeply wired into you that you do it every single day without realizing it. And the worst part? It feels good. It feels like progress. It feels like you are moving forward, but you are not. You are standing completely still, and science now knows exactly why. What I'm about to tell you has been confirmed by researchers at New York University. It has been observed in law students, athletes, entrepreneurs, and ordinary people across the world. And once you understand it, truly understand it, you will never look at your own dreams the same way again. The habit is this. You talk about what you are going to do before you do it. That is it. That one habit is silently killing every goal you have ever set, every business you plan to start, every skill you meant to learn, every version of yourself you have been trying to become for years. And the terrifying thing is that the more excited you feel when you talk about it, the more damage it does. Stay with me, because what comes next will hit you somewhere very deep. There is a psychologist named Peter Gollwitzer. He spent years at New York University studying why driven, intelligent, ambitious people fail to follow through on their goals. In 2009, he published research that shocked the academic world. He gathered law students, not lazy people, not unmotivated people, but sharp, career-focused individuals who had everything to gain from achieving their goals. He split them into two groups. Both groups wrote down their plans, their ambitions, what they intended to do. But here was the only difference. One group had their plans seen and acknowledged by the experimenter. One quiet nod, one moment of recognition. That was all. The other group's plans were folded and dropped into a box, unseen, unacknowledged. Then both groups were given 45 minutes to work on actual legal cases. The results were staggering. The students whose plans had been seen by someone worked significantly less. They quit earlier. They gave less effort. The students whose plans stayed completely private worked harder, longer, and with far more focus. One nod. One moment of acknowledgement. That was enough to drain the motivation from an entire group of ambitious people. Now I want you to hold that thought. And I want to tell you about Daniel. Daniel was 31 years old. He lived in a small city and worked an ordinary job at a packaging company. But Daniel had one gift that everyone around him recognized instantly. He was extraordinary with his hands. He could fix machines that stumped engineers. He could look at a broken system and see the solution before anyone else in the room. His colleagues admired him. His family believed in him completely. His neighbors spoke about him with genuine pride. Everyone who knew Daniel was absolutely certain that he was weeks away from doing something remarkable. The problem was, Daniel had been weeks away for 7 years. Every few months, a new fire would ignite inside him. One season, it was an electronics repair business. The next, it was advanced welding. Then one evening, he sketched out the design for a water pump, a device he believed could bring clean water to villages that had none. That one was different. That one had a depth to it. When he talked about it, his voice dropped lower. His hands moved slower. Something in him knew that idea was real. But Daniel had a ritual. Before he began anything, before he touched a single tool, he talked. He would sit at the tea stall near his house and gather whoever was around and talk for hours about what he was going to build. Every detail, every step, every timeline. And people leaned in close because Daniel made everything sound alive. They told him, "That is a brilliant idea. No one thinks like you. The world needs people like you, Daniel." And Daniel walked home each night feeling like a man who had already won. Here is what was happening inside his brain, and inside yours every time you do the same thing. When someone hears your goal and responds with praise, your brain releases dopamine, the exact same chemical that fires when you actually complete something real. Your brain, in that moment, cannot fully separate the feeling of intention from the feeling of achievement. So it gives you the reward early. It pays you before the work is done. And once the brain has collected its payment, it has no reason to keep pushing you. The drive evaporates, the spring goes loose, and you wake up the next morning wondering why you suddenly feel so tired about the very idea that thrilled you the night before. Psychologists call this premature closure. Your mind creates what researchers describe as a social reality, a mental state where the announced goal feels partially real simply because another person now carries it with them. You feel like a business owner before you own a business. You feel like an artist before you finish a single piece. The distance between who you are and who you want to be gets filled with applause instead of action. Daniel did not know any of this. He only knew that every fire he started ended in the same cold ash. One evening, he sat alone on a roadside bench watching the city go dark. An older man sat beside him. His name was Rashid. He had spent 40 years as a watchmaker and now spent his evenings in this same quiet spot watching the world. He never said much, but there was something in his stillness that made people speak honestly around him. Daniel told him everything, every idea, every announcement, every round of praise that had led to nothing. Every morning he had woken up with no energy to do the work he had celebrated the night before. When he finished, he looked at the ground. He felt smaller than he had ever felt. Rashid was quiet for a long time. Then he asked slowly, "Tell me, when you wind a watch, what is it that holds the power to move the hands?" Daniel thought for a moment. "The spring, the tension inside." Rashid nodded. "Now imagine this. Every time you open the back of the watch and show someone the spring before the watch is assembled, a little tension escapes. A little energy releases into the air. If you do it enough times, by the time you finally close the watch and set it on the table, the spring is already loose. The hands do not move, not because the spring was weak, but because you let the energy out too soon." He looked at Daniel calmly. "Your ideas are your spring. Your excitement is your tension. The moment you speak them out to an audience that praises you, that energy leaves you. It dissolves into their applause. And when you return to the work the next morning, there is nothing left inside to drive you forward." Daniel sat very still. Rashid continued, "There is a reason seeds are buried in darkness. A seed placed on a rock in full sunlight where everyone can see it. It dries. Birds take pieces of it. It never becomes anything. But a seed pushed quietly under the soil, hidden, unseen, watered in silence. It grows roots before it grows anything visible. By the time it breaks through the surface, it is already strong. It does not need you to announce it. It announces itself." Daniel walked home that night without saying a word to anyone. Something had shifted permanently inside him. Not a dramatic transformation, not a lightning bolt. Something quieter and far more powerful. A door closing on the old version of himself. He opened his notebook. He wrote 3 words. Build first. Talk never. He chose the water pump. The idea he had announced 3 times and never started once. He told absolutely no one, not his brother, not his friends, not the men at the tea stall who had applauded him so warmly. He picked up his pencil and began drawing. Every morning before work, 1 hour in the corner of his yard. Every night after dinner, another hour. He made sketches, he bought parts, he made mistakes he was embarrassed by. He threw things away and started over. There were nights when the doubt was so heavy he sat on the ground of his yard and stared at the scattered pieces and felt completely lost. But there was no audience watching. No one waiting for his next announcement, no one to impress or disappoint. He had nothing but himself and the work. And this is the part that the research confirms in the most powerful way. When there is no external validation waiting for you, the brain is forced to find its fuel from somewhere deeper. Psychologists call it intrinsic motivation, the kind that comes from inside rather than from applause. and a 2011 study by University of Chicago researcher Fishbach found something extraordinary. When positive feedback signals to the brain that progress has been made toward a goal, even just praise, even just a compliment, it actually decreases the person's desire to continue. The acknowledgement itself becomes the destination. Once you feel you have arrived, your feet stop moving. Daniel's feet did not stop. 4 months after that evening on the bench, he had a working prototype. It was rough. It was imperfect in a dozen ways. But the water moved. The pressure held. The mechanism he had sketched and revised and broken and rebuilt for 4 months worked. He sat on the ground of his yard in the dark and looked at what his hands had made. And he felt something that took him a moment to recognize because he had never truly felt it before. Not the warm surface glow of someone else's praise, but something much heavier and quieter and more permanent. The feeling of something real, something built, something that existed in the world because of no one but him. He called his brother, said only, "Come to the yard. I want to show you something." His brother walked in, stood in front of the pump, watched it run, was quiet for a long moment, then said softly, "Daniel, when did you build this?" Daniel said, "Been working on it a few months." His brother shook his head slowly. "You never said a word." Daniel smiled. "I wanted to finish it first." Within 2 years, that pump design found its way to a small organization working on rural water access. The idea Daniel had talked about for 3 years without ever building became real in the 2 years he finally stayed silent. Now sit with this for a moment. Think about your own life with honest eyes. How many ideas have you announced with full excitement and never returned to? How many mornings have you woken up feeling empty about a dream you celebrated aloud the night before? How many versions of yourself have you described to other people? Versions you have never actually become. The research is not vague on this. The science is clear. The NYU study, the dopamine mechanism, the concept of premature closure and social reality, decades of psychology all pointing toward the same truth. Thoughtful. The more you tell people what you plan to do, the less energy you have to actually do it. Your dreams are not weak. Your willpower is not broken. You are not lazy, and you are not cursed. You are simply releasing the tension before the watch is assembled. You are leaving the seed on the rock where everyone can admire it, and then wondering why it never grows. Bury the seed. Close the watch. Protect the tension. Do the work in the quiet, in the dark, in the hours when no one is watching and no one is praising and there is nothing between you and the goal except effort. Inspirational. And when it is built, when it is solid and real and finished, bring it into the light. Let it speak for itself in a language that no announcement has ever matched. Because the world does not remember what you said you would do. It only remembers what you did. Sighs. The spring does not need to be shown. It only needs to be wound.